Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to see how the explicit dependency will work, and then we'll take one example which is EC2 instance and S3, how we can implement explicit dependency between them. Now this is the second type of dependency in the Terraform, which is called explicit dependency. Basically, explicit dependency means there is no actual technical dependency. However, based on our requirement, you still want to control the order of resource creation. Why? Because logically one resource should come before another resource. Since Terraform by default works on implicit dependency, sometimes that is not enough, especially during the technical hurdles in real-time projects. So that is where explicit dependency comes into the picture. So what is mean by explicit dependency? We already seen in the previous video. Please go through that. So basically, resources are not linked automatically. That case we can use explicit dependency. But based on your force, Terraform to follow a specific order. So this is where we used meta argument called depends on. So depends on is the meta argument which we can use to implement the explicit dependency. Okay, so now let's take a real-time example where we can use for one EC2 instance and one S3 bucket. Technically, there is no dependency between EC2 and S3. However, logically, I want the S3 bucket to be created first, since the EC2 instance may store some data into later. So despite of no direct connection, I want to Terraform to do it. So in this case, I can show you the code. We need to create S3 bucket first, then create EC2 instance. That is exactly why, because we used explicit dependency. So let's jump into the code base. So this is the code base I have captured for explicit dependency. Here I was using 3 blocks. One is called provider block and another 2 is called resource blocks. So S3 is the resource block and EC2 instance is the another resource block. Okay, so here based on our requirement, we need to create the S3 bucket first. So and then after S3 bucket is created, then we can create the EC2 instance. Please see here, we are using depends on. The EC2 should be created after S3 bucket. Okay, so AWS underscore S3 underscore bucket dot test. Once this is created, only the EC2 will be created. Okay, so here one important point you need to know is, so I did not use any attribute of S3 bucket. I only use the resource type and name. Okay, so basically depends on only needs resource type dot resource dot name, which is called test. That's all. Okay, so what is depends on? Depends on is a meta argument. So meta argument means it works for any resources, not only EC2, even S3 bucket, IIM, VPC, any resources. So the depends on argument will be working. Of course, this is a common across all the resource block, not only for EC2 instance. Okay, so let's run the code. So here I pasted the code. Then after that I need to do for Terraform init. It will initialize that working directory. That means it will be downloaded for all necessary plugins. Once this is done, we can do for Terraform validate. So successfully initialized. Then Terraform validate. So it will check whether all the configurations are proper. It will validate the code. So it's a valid configurations. Then even sometimes if any syntax issues, we can do for Terraform format. So it's everything is good. Then we can do for Terraform plan. So it will create the plan for our main.tf. See here, there it's showing 2. Then here we need to go for Terraform apply. So in the previous class we have seen once we can enter this command, it will give the prompt for confirmation. So instead of that we can give auto approve. So if we give this one, that means we can give confirmation, automatically it will go. Now it will apply. So based on our input, first should be created that S3 bucket. See here, first it will created that S3 bucket, then EC2 instance is created. Okay, so this is the order we have given. Okay, so if we go to that dashboard, see it may created one more instance. See here, explicit dependency. Then if we go to that S3 bucket, so S3 bucket also should be created. See here, test S3 12th December 2025. This is the name we have given in the code, which is created. Okay, so what we understand here is, what you observe. So you will clearly see S3 bucket is created first, then EC2 instance is created second. Pretty much Terraform is following the order we forced or we have given. Okay, so even we have seen in the dashboard also the 2 resources got created. And one more very important point you should have to remember is, when we will see in the destroy scenario, Terraform destroy. Okay, so what happened? Let's watch. First EC2 instance get destroyed, then S3 bucket get destroyed. So creation is top to bottom, and whereas destroy is or destruction is bottom to top. Okay, if you are put S, see here, first is EC2 instance is destroying, then after that S3 bucket is destroyed. Okay, so remember here, while creating it will go to the top to bottom, while deleting or destroying it will go to the bottom to top. Okay, so there is another requirement. If you want to destroy only target resources, that time we can use Terraform destroy and we can pass -target. You have to mention AWS _instance.test. Okay, so then the time that will be deleted only EC2 instance, S3 remaining untouched. So if you want to delete only particular resources, you can use this command, Terraform destroy, and you have to add extra target. What target you are going to delete? You can use AWS _instance and then dot instance name. Okay, so here AWS _ is the resource, then resource name. Okay, so this is how we are going to create between the resources explicit dependency, and you have seen how to create, how to delete. And if you refresh here after destroying, now see the S3 bucket got deleted. And even if you can go to that EC2 dashboard, the EC2 instance also deleted. See here, it got deleted. Okay, so remember, explicit dependency is manual control, which we can be used when there is no implicit link. This will help us to solve the real world pain points and touch points. Very useful during the parking issues, sequencing problems, and infra ordering. Okay, so despite of no direct dependency, Terraform still behaves exactly how we instruct it. And eventually, this is why Terraform is so powerful for infrastructure provisioning. please go through this. If any doubts, could you please comment in my channel. Thanks for watching.